Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. So I'm back in the BMW E60 today, and we are back with another N47 N57 engine video. And today I want to talk about how you can improve your fuel efficiency, so how you can gain more MPG when you drive these cars with these engines in. Now then, when BMW released these engines some time ago now, they claimed to get some pretty impressive MPG figures. Now obviously, real world versus factory claimed figures tend to vary slightly, but some people have claimed to not even get half of what BMW have claimed for these engines to produce in terms of MPG. So in this video I kind of want to break down what you can do to try and get yourself as close or even beyond the MPG figures that BMW claim that you can get from these engines. So I think what we'll do is we'll get outside, we'll head over to the engine bay, and yeah, I'll go ahead and show you a thing or two. Okay then, so as you can see, this is my N47 engine. It's in a 520D, the E65 20D. Now, on average, I tend to get around 50 MPG. I can get upwards of 60 MPG on a long run, traveling at 60-70 miles per hour. And I get around 40 MPG driving around town. So they are not too far away from BMW's claimed figures. Now bear in mind, I have done quite a lot of maintenance on this engine and I have got it running very, very nice. Now then, the first major thing that is worth mentioning, and it's something that you may or may feel comfortable doing, is the removal of the EGR system and the DPF, the diesel particulate filter. So I'll go ahead and remove the engine cover, and you will see that there is no EGR system. So that is the intake ports through there. That's where the exhaust gases go through into the cylinder head, and then it mixes with the air that goes into the intake manifold. And obviously this is the exhaust manifold here, so they come from there, they go through the EGR valve, go through the cooler, and then through into the intake ports. And obviously that's all blocked off. The cooler and the EGR valve itself is completely removed. Now, why did I decide to remove it? I decided to remove it because it's one less thing to worry about, and by design the EGR valve is only going to block up over time, and when it does, you're going to lose a significant amount of power and fuel efficiency as well. When it gets blocked up, that's when people are struggling to get 30-40 MPG, but because mine is completely removed, it is running the exact same all of the time. There's no risk of it getting blocked up now. And that's pretty much the same for the DPF as well, because there's now no risk of it getting blocked up because it's now actually freer flowing. The exhaust gases can leave, you know, more freely. You know, it's actually slightly improved my MPG over having the DPF fully working and in place. So completely removing those two systems is probably one of the biggest things that you can do to improve your MPG. Now there is some other things as well, like having a nice clean air filter. Obviously, if your air filter is stocked up, is very restrictive and is very dirty, then you are going to limit the amount of air that can even come into the intake system. I actually have a K&N panel filter in here, as you can see, so it is nice, free flowing. You know, you don't really gain too much, especially with it being a turbo diesel. You don't really gain too much in terms of performance. The main reason that I decided to buy it was the fact that it simply lasts forever, and if I gain, you know, 1 or 2 horsepower, then so be it. But that is a nice, good, clean air filter that will last forever. I can go ahead and, you know, manually clean it. You know, it's very important to have a clean air filter for the smooth running and you know, for the efficiency of your engine. Now, next thing that is definitely worth doing as well is, now this is something I'd recommend doing after potentially removing your EGR system, is the removal and cleaning of your intake manifold. So if you've never removed an intake manifold, especially on a diesel engine before, you'll actually be not pleasantly surprised, because this thing will be completely full of oil and soot. Now, the oil, that isn't an issue, that just comes from the crankcase ventilation system, and that it's perfectly fine to find oil in your intake system. But what you do not want is the mixture of sooty exhaust gases with that, because that all builds up and forms a very crusty, not very nice mixture in your intake manifold and restricts airflow. Again, like with the, you know, stocked up air filter, if we do not have proper airflow going into the cylinders, it's obviously going to ruin the fuel air ratio. It means we're going to have less air going in and more fuel, and again, not going to have a good, clean, efficient combustion. Now, if you want to go one step further, when you remove the intake manifold to clean it, you can actually attempt to clean the intake ports themselves as well, because again, like the intake manifold, they will be pretty filled with soot and oil. But the main thing is you need to be very careful when attempting to clean the intake ports. I did on my engine. I actually done it when the engine was out, so the rocker cover was removed and I could see when the valves were open or closed. Obviously you need to do it when the valves are closed, because you're going to risk all that sooty oil falling down into your combustion chamber. Another thing with the intake manifold, and this is something that I would not advise you to do if MPG, if fuel efficiency is one of your top priorities, and that is to not remove the swirl flaps. So it is potentially an issue where the swirl flaps fail on this engine. It's not as common as the M47 or the M57. It's actually the rod that fails on this. It becomes loose and the rod snaps, unlike the flaps themselves coming loose. If you do have that issue, obviously you have two options. You can remove the swirl flaps, you'll lose some low down torque and you'll lose some MPG along with it, or you can do what I do and just replace the intake manifold. This is a new reconditioned intake manifold with reinforced swirl flap rod and swirl flaps themselves. So with it working fully as it should, it means I'm going to get the best efficiency possible from this engine. And that's kind of all of the main things that you can do to increase the efficiency of this engine. A couple of more minor things would be with the pulleys themselves, so on the alternator, the AC compressor, the power steering pump, and obviously you have the automatic tensioner, you have the idler pulley, you have the water pump, and then you have the crankshaft pulley as well down there at the bottom. It's just to make sure that they are spinning nice and freely. Obviously anything that isn't spinning freely is going to cause the engine to have to work harder. It's going to have to, you know, use more power to turn the engine round and you know, to spin these pulleys. So if you do have any pulleys that aren't spinning freely, it's a good idea to make sure that they are doing so by replacing them. And I guess the kind of last thing that you can do to improve your fuel efficiency is to change your oil often. So I cannot stress this enough, especially on the N47 and the N57. Change your oil every 5,000 to 6,000 miles. It will reward you, believe me. Obviously, if you have dirty, contaminated engine oil, your engine is going to have to work harder and it's going to put more wear on the internal engine components anyway. But yeah, it's really not worth skimping out on your oil changes anyway. Okay then, so that's kind of everything that I can show you in the engine bay. Now, it is worth noting as well that I have had a remap. So, you know, this engine has been tuned to around 220 brake horsepower. But with that, with the tune, what actually happens is the torque limiters can be increased, and it essentially means that you can have more low down torque. So because you have more low down torque, you don't actually have to rev the rev the engine as higher to achieve the same amount of power. So with a remap, with a tune, you can actually gain fuel efficiency. You know, you can actually save fuel in doing so. But it is worth remembering that if you are going to use the extra additional power, then you will be using slightly more fuel. So that is worth remembering as well. Now, if you have done everything that I have mentioned in this video and you are still getting poor MPG, then you may just have a lead foot. You may be pushing too hard down on the accelerator pedal. Now, you need to realize that with a diesel, they don't have a throttle body. So it's not like a petrol engine car. So with a petrol engine car, obviously you push the throttle body and it opens, you know, you push down the accelerator pedal and it opens up a throttle body to allow more air to go into the engine. With a diesel, all you are doing when you're pushing down on the accelerator pedal is injecting more fuel. So you have to think of it as the harder you push down the accelerator pedal, the more fuel you are using. So make sure you are in the correct gear. You know, if you have a gear shift indicator, that will usually tell you what the most efficient gear to be in is. So yeah, use things like that. You know, really just try and not push down on the accelerator pedal at all. Use things like cruise control to your advantage as well to keep a constant speed, and that's going to mean that, you know, you're not going to have to keep injecting more fuel. It's when you accelerate then brake, then accelerate then brake, that's when you use the majority of your fuel. So really try and not brake as often as possible. And yeah, just don't, you know, stamp down on the accelerator pedal. Just try and push it as lightly as possible. But yeah, I hope this video has been somewhat helpful. I hope you've learned something at least. Please remember to give this video a like if you want to see more videos on these engines. Leave a comment down below, of course, if you have any questions. Subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in that next one. Peace!